This is Alexa Linton, and you're listening to the Whole Horse Podcast. I'm coming to you from the Cowichan Valley on beautiful Vancouver Island in Canada, and I'm excited to be bringing amazing instructors from around the world to share their knowledge about all the ways that we can keep ourselves and our horses well and happy, and about some of the cutting-edge techniques, training, and different aspects that are coming into the horse industry and changing it from within. I'm so excited you're here, and I'm excited about the times that we live in and the shifts that are happening in the horse industry before our eyes. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. It's Alexa Linton here, and you're here on the Whole Horse Podcast. And this is episode 50. 50, everybody. It feels like a big one. I'm so glad you're here. And with me today, I have the wonderful Jayne Roberts. Thanks for being here, Jayne.
Good morning or good evening, I guess.
Yes, we're on very different time zones. Jayne's tuning in from Australia here today, and we've had a conversation before, and we've had many other conversations, and I absolutely love having you on. You're always willing to go to some interesting, cool places with me, sometimes uncomfortable places with me. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
I appreciate you letting me ride alongside.
Absolutely. Yeah. So today we have a loose plan of where we want to go. Um, we really wanted to speak a little bit to what's happening in our world globally right now, because it does have an impact on our experience with horses and how we're relating at this moment. So, we're in the midst of a global pandemic right at this moment. And yeah, it's wild times. It's wild times in this world. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so Jayne and I are here in part to help all of us slow down and get in our bodies and slowly find our way through a very rapidly changing world right now. Yeah. And I'm being calm. Jayne is like in this beautiful meditative state right now, and I'm watching her on Zoom, and I'm like chilling out as she's doing it. So Jayne, for those of our listeners who haven't heard your other podcast and are just getting to know you now, will you share just a little bit about you and your amazing journey over the last few years?
Goodness.
Summarizing.
Living in the void, right in the transition, I think has definitely been the last few years. So really transitioning out of that equine science space, the very traditional part of our industry that I have been involved in for 40 something years, and really opening the stable door on a lot of what has been always done and questioning what just didn't resonate for me in my body, in my experience anymore. And to cut a long story short, that came out in the beautiful black Frisian horse that's on my photograph. He was the whistleblower on my high functioning anxiety, and that called into question a lot of what was sort of running through my body that I wasn't aware of. So I then kind of managed to see the equine nutrition world and the equine vet world in a much different light, and that the problems that I was being called out to were actually fundamentally human problems. Our nervous system's just on this really high, vigilant, high alert, very much in our heads. So to cut another very, very long story short, it led me to yoga and Iris yoga, nidra meditation, and that's the spaces that I facilitate, particularly with women, and horses right now, just to allow them to meet themselves exactly where they're at, because there's a lot of beautiful gold in those spaces that we tend to try and chase out of the arena a little bit too quickly. So yeah, I love holding space for that, and there's a lot of transformation goes down in the here and now. So yes, that is where I am at, and the interesting thing is I've watched that being tested in the last 6 months for me, in particular, because of course I am in Australia, and we have just gone through the whole bushfire thing, and before that it was droughts, and then we had the floods, and then I had 9 weeks school holidays, and then I had 3 of those weeks with my husband at home as well, and now we're about to be kind of on lockdown. So I've had a lot of tests to my nervous system, and the 9-week school holidays, I'm not kidding, is like the ultimate test for me, because I really like my own space and I love my daughter to pieces, but she is full on, just so connected to everything. And I got through the 9 weeks and I'm like, all right, this shit works. Because I feel really good. So,
and then this happened. Are the schools out there yet?
They're not. And what I'm really noticing, for me is there are a lot of words out there, and words keep us locked out of our bodies, and that's exactly what it's intended to do. So we need less words and more feels right now, and we need to feel all of the feels. And those spaces, those intimate, safe spaces in particular, are so critical right now, and really to lean into the body workers that we trust, to lean into the therapy spaces that we trust. Whether I personally prefer somatic-based therapies, that's just what I respond to particularly well. There's a lot of these beautiful spaces out there now that I think we need to be willing to actually step out of the arena and go, hang on a minute here, this is not working for us anymore. Can we try something differently? And our bodies, we have to go at the pace of our slowest part, and our bodies will tell us that, just like my right knee is right now.
Right. I've got a few of those parts too that lag a little bit behind. Yes.
Yeah.
I want to circle back around, because I think there's some really critical points to our conversation today. And one of the things that you said just a little while ago was around this idea of being high functioning, or, like that concept of high functioning, but anxious, which I, as you can imagine, I really resonate with. And I think there's some listeners that may not really have a grasp of what that means. So you share a little bit more about who that human is. Like you or I or most horse people.
Yes. I will come at it from my perspective, because it's very different for each and every one, and whatever resonates, take, and what doesn't, just leave behind. But some of us come in as what's known as master regulators, co-regulators. So we tend to have been in quite volatile situations for very extended periods, especially in our younger years. So we learn survival techniques to really bring that energy back down into a safe place. So what can tend to happen over the years, we're like this, the sort of rock solid person that when all manner of chaos is going on, we're just this solid ship among stormy waters. What happened for me was when I had my daughter, it tipped my nervous system pretty much over the edge, because I was not only looking after me, I also then I became a mom, and I had to actually look after this child. So yeah, that was kind of my pivotal moment. So when I went to get those photographs taken in particular, the horse we actually went away from the herd, and the horse became really, really agitated, and I couldn't understand why. I was really quite reactive. So he was sort of getting really anxious and stomping feet, and I was being very reactive to that. And I thought, what the heck is going on here? Because I'd come out of the vet world. We dealt with all manner of horses who were needle shy, and worked through all of that and all the rest of it. And all of a sudden, I can't handle a horse, and at the time I didn't know what was going on. I observed it. And it wasn't until I actually went and did yoga teacher training that I became aware I had completely locked myself out of my body.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the easy way, or the best way for me to get through what I was, needed to get through. So what I find happens is that quite often with horse people, we'll go to our horses for that, because horses are just spectacular co-regulators. They want to constantly bring that nervous system down. So from a nutrition perspective, again, that was what I was starting to pick up on, that the behavior problems I was being called out with in the nutrition world, I started to be able to pick up on the nervous system patterning that was actually coming through from the human, and realized it didn't matter what we were going to change in the diet. Fundamentally, it was kind of the human that needed to go and spend a little time on the mat and nourishing themselves. So yeah, so the high function anxiety person is somebody that comes across as having their shit together, and inside the body's going wah! And it just exhausts us eventually. We are very, very high functioning. The stuff I've kind of gone through, and I tend to go to academia, or I tend to go to learning. That's my drug of choice.
Yes, me too, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've had to learn to really reel that in, and go, okay, my brain can cope with a whole lot of information, but our bodies work on a whole different circuitry. It's an ancient evolving circuitry, and it needs time to integrate. And we know that from a neuroscience perspective, we know we need to take a chunk of information in quite an urgent time, in a focused, urgent time frame, and then we need to rest. And it's in that rest period that the brain actually integrates the new information. And that's what we're not doing. We're not giving ourselves in this society the time to actually rest and integrate that new bit of information. And of course, this, the current situation as it is, we've got information flying at us left, right, and center. It's an invitation to actually step back from it all and check in with our body and go, okay, what is actually registering in my nervous system right now?
Yep.
So the brain can make sense of it. It's what it's there for. When we're blessed with that, but our bodies run on the instinctual wisdom. And with that in mind, we're also running off, not too far ago, major plague outbreaks and smallpox outbreaks where we may have lost members of the family not too far back. So this is all being called back up again. And the body's going, hang on a minute, I remember this.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question in a very succinct way, but that was sort of my journey through noticing the high functioning.
Yeah. And it's an important notice. I mean, I had a similar thing happen with horses. It was when I was starting my training as an equine sport therapist, and I was going into working with horses therapeutically. And they basically said in no uncertain terms, you are not allowed to touch me like that. Right. Yeah. And I took it quite personally, when you are used to having handled horses forever, and, but these horses were like, you're not putting those hands on me in a healing way. These are not healing hands for me. And it was a real wake up call to how disembodied I had been for so long. That was
I was 23 when I started school. So
Mm.
it's a lot of years to be living outside the body. And, um, I would love to talk about that because I think a lot of us live there and we don't even necessarily realize it. So what allowed you, like, what were the signs and maybe I'll share as well, like, what are the signs that showed you like the disembodiment that was going on for you?
Mm. The first realization was so in feminine embodiment yoga, which I teach through equestrian embodiment yoga, we go in and actually track um, our sensations. So one of the things we do is actually drop down into our heart space at the beginning. It's kind of one of the opening grounding practices. And I remember being asked to feel the warmth and the radiance of my heart space. And I remember thinking, I actually can't feel a damn thing here. Oh my God, I actually have a heart. And I do, because it's like my heart is just so wide open to everybody, but I couldn't feel my own. And I remember being quite shocked about it and sort of going and talking to my trainer afterwards, and we kind of got into what is the feeling, and I said, I feel numb, and she said, okay, start there. What does the numbness feel like? Where do you feel that in your body? Does it have a color? Does it have an image? Does it have an emotion and a memory? So even though we don't think we feel anything, because I get that a lot, I don't feel it. Or if we, for example, if we have a riding problem that we can't get past in terms of a leg that won't do what you want it to do because it's numb. It's numb for a reason, and that's a door in. So it's not that you're just not broken. It's just that's your door in. And then everything tends to come back online very quickly, and you kind of go, oh my God, that's exactly how I'm supposed to. And then the nervous system kind of goes, oh, too much too quickly. So, you have to be so gentle with bringing people back into their body, because it will have a rebound effect. And the nervous system does not like cathartic experiences. The nervous system likes little nibbles, little breadcrumbs.
I often relate it to like a pressure cooker. Like, don't just like take the lid off, just like little by little by little by little by little. Yeah.
And that cathartic experience, just to kind of get off on a sidetrack slightly for a minute, that cathartic experience is this whole showmanship, and showmanship subjugates trauma. Soma, sorry. So it kind of just annihilates through the somatic felt sense. When we go in and we try to make the big sort of show of, look at what I can do with this horse, or look what we can do, it actually is just completely cutting off the whole feedback from the body, and that will rebound like nobody's business. And in horses in particular, they tend to be so some of them are extremely expressive. That's why people don't like working with mares, because mares tell you exactly what's going on. Geldings will tend to put up with a whole bunch more crap before they just go into can't take this anymore and explode. Mares will tend to be quite upfront about a lot of things. Not all mares though. So I think there's kind of a real need to let those real cathartic showmanship experiences just be put to one side. The 30 days, from wild to mild and all that needs to just not be in our arenas, especially right now.
Yeah. We have a cringeworthy 2-day, horsemanship challenge. I'm like, oh, it's so much, so hard on the nervous system. And you were speaking to this idea of that showmanship, and I can so relate, because as a kid, I was quite talented athletically, and And what that looked like is that I played like really high level sports a lot. So I was typically in a practice or two every single day of the week, riding twice a week, dancing, plus sports council, plus this, plus straight A's, plus, talk about highly functioning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I kid you not that I'm still clearing the residual rebound in my body from those experiences. Because I started playing, I was a gymnast by the time I was about 7 or 8. Started playing high level soccer at 11 and dance, all those things, right? And but being disembodied, like also not living in my body and feeling pain and knowing, what was going on in my body. And and it that lands, in my system anyways, in my nervous system, the ways that reverberated through are still being felt, very much so, are still being unpacked. Yeah.
And I think so much of our equitation space has gone that way as well, over the years, unfortunately. And the beauty of it is we have, I spend so much time with people just in walk, because there's just this beautiful, rhythmic, repetitive 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And even now that's just giving me whole goosebumps, and I'm not even on the horse. So it's there is a remembrance, there's an ancient remembrance of that heartbeat, the beat of Mama Nature. And horses don't run unless they have to. They take a few steps forward, stop, eat. And this is where I'd say to people, when we get overwhelmed like this, our horses are an incredible portal back into our animal nature, because they've been around for over 55 million years plus. We're still debating that right now. And they have 3 things that they've refined to keep them alive, which is, forage, which is eat your greens and actually look for food too, because it's a behavior, it's not just a thing. That whole companionship, we need to get by with a little help from our friends. We can't just be out, in the herd by ourselves. And just the freedom, the movement to actually move around and kind of have our full range of what it is to be a horse or a human. And I think if we just remember to bring it back to those 3 fundamental basics, there's a lot of wisdom in there, when we're getting bombarded with all this stuff, not just with what's going on in the world right now, but also kind of all of the different techniques and the try this now, and it's got to be this way or the highway. And it's just, no, we've gone beyond those binary terms. That's dualism, and it's gone. We live in a world now where we can have can have positive and negative reinforcement. Sorry if that ticks a few people off, but just hold the 2 together and see what comes up for you.
Yeah.
Or
what's the truth for you and your horse?
Yes, because we're all so incredibly different, and we all have our own essence and our own tapestry that we're not designed to fit into one or the other. And that in itself, like, I just felt my body go, because the pressure's off. Peel the labels off. Underneath the labels, what's actually fundamentally there? What are you meeting in that moment? So it doesn't matter. Then you can choose the tools you want to use that might work better for you in that moment. But if we can't meet where we're at right here and now, we can't get over there. We're not here. We can't get over there. So
yeah. Well, it was interesting. I was on a client call today even, and she was sharing kind of that peer pressure that can happen, in a barn or something, of like, why aren't you riding? Why, she's been working on trailer loading, and, having to work with people that are like, well, you have to end with that horse on the trailer no matter what. And it's like, no, Nope. And I just said during the session, I was like, you have every permission to take as long as it takes.
Yes.
Every permission. There's no rush. There's no rush. You're building foundation for trust and connection right now. And
Yeah.
she was like, oh, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a very, very, I mean, that permission slip, I often, as a friend of mine jokes, you know, she'll often get a piece of paper and just write, you have permission, and like hand you the permission slip. And it takes a great deal of courage to go outside of what we have been taught. And the thing is, when things are coming at you left, right, and center, they're coming at you from a very fear-based perspective. So I understand that. I get that. I was that one of those people who would um, stick very rigidly to either strict science. I get that all the time. If it's not based in solid science, then I don't want anything to do with it. And I'll say, okay, that's fine if that's where you're at with that right now. Um, I'll be here when you want to explore outside of that a little bit further down the line. So yeah, I mean, all credit to those people who are going against the norm, or going against, you know, what's sort of given to them as the only frame of reference, because where that comes from is a deep disresonance in our body. There's something that goes, this isn't right. And that takes so much courage to tap back into that again. That's your interoceptive capacity. That's your internal, circuitry going, mm-mm, this is not where we need to be going, and that we need to trust that now more than ever, I think.
Yeah.
It's being called back to us. Everything that's going on right now is calling us out of our heads and back into our bodies. We really need to be there.
Yeah, yeah. So for those who are not familiar with the Yoga Nidra, would you share just a little bit more about that work?
The magic of Yoga Nidra. So Yoga Nidra has been around since about 4000 BC, 5000 BC. Probably predates that. There's several different lineages. Sorry, palm tree falling in the dog. Thinks it's some kind of monster. So the one that I teach in particular is IRS Yoga Nidra, which has been adapted from the very ancient texts and brought to a more modern day secular approach. So it kind of takes out all of the language and the imagery that has been used with the more traditional schools. The way I liken it is, it's just a welcome home to yourself. Because there's something inside of us, our true essence, the you of Alexa and the me of Jayne, that is essentially who we are. And that doesn't change. Nothing can touch that, nothing can hurt that, nothing can take that away. And what kind of builds outside of that is all of these layers, whether it be through society conditioning, what happens to us, what's maybe been passed down, epigenetically. And the most outer layer of that is our physical body. So we always tend to come in through our physical body. What are the sensations that we're noticing? And that could be inside and out. And it can be simple as the touch of air on your skin. Some people can't even feel that. So we have to so if you just rub your fingertips together, what's the sensation underneath there? And then we can start there and start to gently bring people back online with that. Then we notice our breath and our energy body and just check in with that. We don't change it, we don't fix it, we just notice it. And then go into feelings and emotions, and then kind of our thoughts and stories and images. And that's where I tend to play the most with people, because I can use body sensing. So that's just kind of checking in with where your body is here and now. So I can use that when people are riding. I can use that when we're walking around the barn. You can use it brushing your teeth. It's like a really super great little tool for all of us to sort of check in with. And one of the other beautiful aspects of it is we use what's called an inner resource. And this is kind of our safe place. And what this tends to be, I mean, for example, my cat Chuck, who's 17, he's been with me through, thick and thin. When he comes in and curls in with me, there's just a felt sense of inner peace and ease and safety, and I don't need anything else. I'm right here, right now. So what we do is we kind of work on that and feel the felt sense in our bodies. So even when he's gone and he's not with me and I'm in the middle of, chaos in the supermarket, I can actually pull that inner resource in, and I just feel grounded and at ease and peaceful. Sometimes it's just okayness, because let's face it, we can get into situations where peace and ease might not be accessible. So just an okayness, it might just be for some people. But what I've noticed for myself, and a lot of people report this as well with the practice, is that in times when things kind of go off, it comes looking for us. And I don't actually need to go and access it anymore. It's there. It's this unshakable ground of being. So even though all of this stuff's coming in and there's anger coming at me, or there's, people fighting in the supermarket with toilet rolls, there's just me going, it's just passing through the guest house. Open the window, comes in through the guest house, goes out the other side. So it's just a really unshakable nervous system. It brings us, from a neuroscience perspective, for those who do like the science, it brings us out of this network where we get stuck in this really recursive thinking, and brings us into a present-centered network, which is where we can just be really here and witnessing everything happening. And we know exactly what to do and what to say in that.
Yeah.
It's not reacting. It's actually it's being in the moment and knowing what to do. So that's, Equi-nidra has just been such an incredibly powerful foundation for me to really go in. And it's a practice that I can practice it, 2 minutes a day, or I can do a full 35 minutes. And the beauty of it is the longer practices really take you down into that state where you're reducing your cortisol response. And they've actually researched all of this in this MRI scans and all kinds of, they've looked at inflammatory markers and blood results. So it's the research is actually really rather solid on it now. The longer practices really help to replenish and restore the body, and bring it down into that very regulated healing state. The shorter practices are great for things like creativity and energy. So if you're feeling a bit kind of, you can do a bit of a shorter practice, and you're just going through different brainwave, different levels in your brainwaves, depending on the level of practice you want to go to. So when we bring the horse aspect in, what I find with that is we get a lot of messages through from the horses. I had a beautiful session with a woman the other day, and it was great because she was lying in bed doing it. So it's like having a little pajama party with your girlfriends. And she said, I was just off on, riding my horses through the paddocks, and we get some really clear messages come through in those liminal spaces. It's a beautiful space to facilitate. And I'm just facilitating. They're going where they need to go in in the whole practice. So so yeah, that's I call it Equi-nidra. I rest with horses, and yeah, there's a lot to be explored in those realms that I'm really just opening the stall doors on now. So it's going to be kind of nice to see.
Yeah, well, and it's perfect timing right now, because I think, even out here, as I'm in British Columbia, so coming to you from Vancouver Island, and it's sounding like things are kind of coming to our doorstep, especially today. I've heard of a few cases in my little town, so it's definitely it's probably in the near future the barns are going to be The more public barns are going to be shutting down to, visitors, and so a lot of people are going to potentially not have their horse fix in the same way. So to be able to connect with horses still from your own home, if you're not able to get to the barn because you're on quarantine or something else is going on, to have these tools and ways to connect, I think it's really potent at this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really important part as well, because when you're using these tools to kind of really give your adrenals a rest and to sort of to regulate yourself down, or our horses pick up on that. I mean, if you go into the heart math research stuff, and we don't even have to be in the same paddock as the horses for them to actually feel that down regulation. So that's going off into higher levels of consciousness, which was a whole other podcast for another time. But if you'd asked me that, or if you had said that to me 3 years ago, I would have gone, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
And rolled my eyes.
Crazy
But
person.
like everything I've always rolled my eyes at over the last few years, I've had to eat humble pie on. So I've seen it and I've felt it. It is possible to even connect to our horses when you can't get to the barn, and there's a lot you can communicate through that. I mean, you know that with your work as well. So for me, I do need the science. I'm still a little bit codependent on that side.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
So that yoga nidra, especially the I-rest yoga nidra, which does have that really good body of research behind it, is a good sort of leg up, I think, for the horse world people.
Big time. Well, and especially if a lot of us are high functioning, slowing down and getting to a space of stillness is not going to be a super easy task.
No. And I actually even noticed that when I'm facilitating, a lot of people who are in that very, because the whole idea with yoga nidra is you just lie there. You don't actually have to do anything, which is the beauty of it. It's not like a lot of the meditations where you're being directed to sort of go somewhere. It's just you meet whatever comes up, and it's quite interesting because the body will often be moving and twitching, even when the body is when you're lying still. So it helps to often complete a lot of the anxiety and just take the person through, especially the longer practices. So and then sometimes I start with a bit of embodied movement first, and that just helps to meet the person where they're at, and then we can drop down into the beautiful rested state.
That sounds lovely. I would love to. Do you have any practices that are, smaller that people can kind of begin with? Is there anything like that? Or anything you can kind of recommend resource-wise?
There's a lot of free resources, and this is what I tend to say to people. There is a website called Total Yoga Nidra, and because there are a lot of different schools of it, some people don't like one and like the other. My particular lineage is a trauma-informed lineage, so they've taken a lot of the imagery out and taken a lot of the sort of distancing with the sort of the Sanskrit, and imagine a crocodile in your pelvis is not something you want to say to somebody who's kind of if you're coming in from a trauma-informed angle.
I can see that.
Some of the yogis went a bit hardcore, so we don't do any of that. It's a very, very gentle ride back in again. So I'll include those links. And also I would say, if nothing else, the inner resource, or finding sort of the inner place of stillness is a beautiful tool to practice. It takes 5 minutes. I bring it in with every practice that I do. I can certainly give links to that, and I might even record a quick sort of 5-10 minute little audio for that, and just to practice that, because it will come looking for you when you need it. Your body's kind of smart like that. So
that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. the times are changing, and there's very much a call to just hold our horses.
Pardon the
Literally.
pun. Hold
Very
our
much so.
horses.
Hold our horses, drop the reins, enjoy the ride. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Go back to
Oh,
grazing.
yes, and I often wonder if, because of the whole quarantine thing, how many horses might just have to be turned out to pasture. We might actually just let our horses be horses for a little while too, which might be nice. Stay off of
Yeah.
them as
Yeah.
well.
It would be nice. Yep. And let us
Yeah.
be, without the busyness, without the rushing, without the, time limits on things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's difficult to come out of, but we
Yeah.
will be brought to a halt without a shadow of a doubt. We can't keep on running the way we're running. So we either choose now to face the uncomfortableness of slowing things down, or we will be brought quite unceremoniously to a face planting halt through our nervous system, which is, gut problems, knee problems, heart attack problems, especially in our 40s when that Kundalini energy starts to rise. It will hit wherever the blockage is and will create a lot of little taps on the shoulder, shall we say.
I always like to listen to the taps so that I don't get the 2x4, I like to say. Yeah, that's
and our strength can be our our superpower can be our kryptonite. So for those of us who are used to really holding that very strong space for everybody else, it can also turn around and really bring us to our knees. So just an invitation to
slow down,
soften into that a little bit. The feminine consciousness is coming home.
Yeah, and that also includes, I think, so vital to bring to the table this idea of asking for help and opening up to community and support. When, I think a lot of us as horse people, we get really used to kind of doing everything ourselves and being really self-supported. And there is a big invitation right now for, okay, we rely on each other, at this moment to keep each other safe and healthy and move through this stuff together.
Yeah, and it's what our horses do. We just go out and spend a little bit of time in the paddock with them.
Doing nothing.
There's a lot goes on in doing nothing. There's a lot goes on. It's just we don't always notice it. And it is, that whole sisterhood thing, I think it's very much being called into task now. It's not just about one of us going down to the barn. And I try to encourage this with women anyway, especially during our bleed time, to just ask, can you feed my horse for a couple of days? Because I'm, kind of could do with a little bit of a rest. And it's a tough one. It's a tough one to ask. But it's so needed.
That's a good idea. I like that. Yeah.
Being in the void, actually being in the unknown is a woman's superpower. That's what we do every month. And let's go back to that wisdom.
Yeah, big deep breath into that.
Oh yeah, and let that sound come all the way through from it too.
Oh yeah.
Breath and sounding gets us through so much.
Yeah. Yeah, for all of you out there that are really, feeling this, and I'm sure a lot, I know I am. So this is, taking these moments. We'll include some resources from Jayne that you can check out, and taking those deep breaths and taking time and stillness to quite literally let your nervous system catch up.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you've got the opportunity to get out in the mornings when the sun's coming up, um, that's a beautiful way to reset, circadian rhythms, and back to where they need to be. It's one of the most potent times for us to really see that, all those contrasting um, light tones. It's what animals do. Actually, my cat was out there the other morning setting his
Mm.
circadian rhythm. Horses will do it. Animals are naturally gravitated towards that. So it's, even if you can't do anything else, try and get up just a little bit earlier and just watch the changing shades
Mm-hmm.
in the skylight, because over through everything the sun still rises and sets, and if we can just find that and trust that, and that be our first point of call, we can kind of find a way through whatever the rest of the day tends to throw at us. There's just a beautiful stillness in that transition space.
Mm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I like that. I do that already, but just because I feed horses every morning.
Yeah, it's and in England, people go, "Oh, there's never any sunlight," but it's not so much the sunlight; it's actually the change in, from darkness to light.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's a very, very magical time to have your eyeballs on it, and just try and get as much face time with people who are well regulated as you possibly can, because that's our social engagement network system. And of course, the first thing we do when something goes wrong is we look up and look around to see who's with us. And of course, with socialized isolation, that can be quite difficult. So,
Yeah.
those beautiful sessions that you are offering with Body Talk is a great way to just see somebody else in that regulated state, because our body goes, "Oh, yeah, look at that. I feel it." It's a very felt sense.
Oh,
But,
I love how you said it as FaceTime, because that might be how we are doing it from here on out.
yeah, and
On FaceTime.
yeah, I mean, that's the reality of it, but there's a lot we can hold.
Mm-hmm.
I find it's a very different space to hold energetically than it is from a face to face, but we have to go with what we've got.
Skill building all the way along. I like it. Yeah.
The way we roll.
That's the way we roll. We got this. We're resourceful. We're resourceful horsewomen. So we got this.
We are horsewomen, goddammit.
Oh, Jayne, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for being on today.
Yes. And if anybody would like to reach out, I do offer those sessions in it online, as well as
Perfect.
in circle and things like that. So, but even if there's any questions, the world needs more rested people in it, and I'm all for, in whichever way, shape, or form that looks for you. Let's rest. It's a revolutionary act, and we're being, without any uncertain terms, called to it right now. So,
yes. How do people get in touch with you?
Facebook is, I think it's just /Equijay. Everything's Equijay. So Instagram, I'm kind of hanging out on Instagram. It's a little bit of a, it's a little bit more of a, it's just a better place for me to hang out, shall I say, right now. I'm actually off my main Facebook account because there's just too much, there are too many words on there for me. So there's there. And then email is jayne@equijay.com. My website is still offline, and I have pulled no shame in that whatsoever, because it takes as long as it takes. And they can get me actually on WhatsApp or Skype, or there's a whole boatload of ways to just look for Equijay and you'll find me in some way, shape, form, or fashion. If you're supposed to, I will be there.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Jayne. Really appreciated this conversation. And I feel very chill now, which is lovely. Yeah, and I hope everybody listening got a little of the dose of chill coming through today. And yeah, that you're all taking good care of yourselves and taking good care of your communities and getting some horse time in, hopefully. And yeah, we'll see you all for another episode. I'm recording lots at the moment because I've got time, and you know, lots of people have time right now, so there'll be a few more coming your way to keep you um, entertained and informed. Yeah, as we go forward in the weeks here. Yeah, yeah, perfect.
Beautiful.
Thanks everybody for tuning in to this conversation. More to come soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I wanted to share a little of what I'm up to and my offerings right now, especially in this challenging time. On Wednesday mornings, 9:30 Pacific, I'm offering a free remote session to clients, community, podcast listeners, and beyond, and would love to see you there. It's a 45-minute session, and we go into a lot of the things we talk about in the podcast, and you also get to experience my energy medicine work, which is pretty exciting. I've included the link down below at wholehorse.ca under the episode that you're watching. As well, I offer remote sessions for you and your horses and the rest of your herd. They're energy medicine sessions. They're very powerful. And I've been doing remote sessions for, almost 15 years now. And I absolutely love them. I find them so effective. So if that's something you're wanting to try, you can always email me at alexa@alexalinton.com to set up a session.